Dear young married couple, today we're going to show you 4 different communication tactics that are sure to destroy your marriage.
That's light and airy, cheery.
Well, it's in keeping with Gottman's 4 Horsemen of the Apocalypse.
Yeah, which is also quite cheery. Before we dive into that, we want to share with you that Having the Talks, our card deck game for parents and children on sex and sexuality, is now available on Amazon. So go pick it up if you're unsure about how do I talk to my kids about sex? What questions do I even bring up? I don't know if they even have any questions, or maybe you grew up in a home where sex wasn't talked about, or it was bad, or it was silent. This will help you change that culture in your own family with your kiddos.
Yeah, they'll really actually help you guys go deeper, have more meaningful conversations, and you'll be having conversations on purpose. Yes. And if you don't have these conversations, somebody else will. Mm-hmm. So you want to be the first one to introduce these so that they can come back to you with any questions that they will have. So on with the show.
All right. So John Gottman, he is the leading researcher on marriage in the 21st century. His research started actually in the 20th century. Yeah. He's been going for about 40 years now. And he has longitudinal studies with over 3,000 couples that he started with in the Love Lab in Seattle. And he just worked with these couples, observed them, watched them live life, watched them argue, watched them make up. And he and his research partners found out what makes marriage last and what makes marriage not last.
Yeah, what makes it thrive.
Yeah.
And he found that these elements that we're going to go over, or he deemed them, or he called them the 4 Horsemen of the Apocalypse, that they will hurt your marriage. And we'll share some studies, and we'll share kind of what he found here. But these are the things that you want to look out for. Mm-hmm. I think that we all can tend to do, but we have to watch out for.
Yeah. So if you find yourselves in these constant cycles of argument and you're like, what's going on? You might find one of the culprits in these 4 horsemen.
All right. So first one.
The first one is criticism. And criticism is a sneaky one. I think us ladies probably tend toward criticism more often. And it's one that really just attacks the person rather than the behavior. Mm-hmm. It's also a lot of blaming. It's a lot of you language.
Yep. Yeah. And when Karissa says ladies, she means like, it's like a 80-20 principle here. So probably 80% of women tend to be more critical. And then 20% of the men are critical. So what you really want to look out for here is, like Karissa said, a kind of a blaming. Mm-hmm. And generally it's about the character rather than the behavior, as mm-hmm. Karissa already said. We see this a lot. And really, normally it's well-intentioned. It's trying to help somebody do better in life or do better for them. But it comes across in a way that's really difficult for the listener, which would be the partner, to hear. Mm-hmm. It runs against the grain and normally doesn't get the result that the person is intending it to have.
So stick around till the end of the video, because we're actually going to give you an example of each of these 4 horsemen and then what to say instead. Yes. What's the antidote for this? Yeah. So here's an example for the first one.
Okay.
All right. So for criticism, an example would be, it's kind of rude to have both of your headphones in while we're all here in the room with you. So you see the tone, it was a blame on the character. I highlighted how rude it was.
She's telling me basically how rude I am.
Exactly.
And am I going to agree with that?
Exactly. Even though, like, yes, I did highlight putting the headphones in as the behavior, but the character trait was that it's rude. Mm-hmm. So it's not as bad as something else we're going to talk about where you just slam the person all together, but it is criticism, and there's a better way to handle that request.
Yes. So this is what we came up with. So the antidote to criticism is the soft startup. John Gottman found that in the first 3 minutes of an argument that researchers could determine the outcome mm-hmm. with a high degree of certainty of what, if it was a favorable outcome. They made up. They felt good about what they resolved, or they didn't feel good. So if there wasn't a soft startup that first 3 minutes, things tended to go pretty badly. So here's an idea that we came up with of how to do a soft startup.
Okay. So
or what to say.
Instead of the whole, it's kind of rude to have both headphones in, you could say, hey, while we're in the same room, I wish you would have one headphone out so that you can hear me or the kids if we have a question or we want to say something. And if that happened, I would feel much more connected.
There you go.
Or much more like a team. So you're expressing a desire, a wish, a request with I language, right? And then you're also saying, here's how I'd feel if that happened. It's a really good way to have a soft startup and also to convey your request.
Right. What's really trying to happen is the person that's asking there is wanting behavior change. But think about it. I want that the deepest part of me wants to be loved and accepted and cherished and all those things. But criticism really strikes at the root of that and says, you're deficient. And that leaves me lacking. And I really don't want to feel deficient because that feels really bad. So most likely I'm going to reject that request to her, to her dismay. So, all right, so let's go to the next one. Normally criticism leads us right into the next horseman, which is called defensiveness. I tend to be more defensive. And a lot of guys actually that I talk to, remember that 80-20 principle, they tend to be more defensive. And it's kind of like, just leave well enough alone. Don't mess with me. She's trying to, help nurture and love me into becoming a better man. And I'm just like, hey, we're chill. We're good right now. Like, why bring this stuff up? That kind of thing. So defensiveness is really kind of deflecting. It's saying, it's not really me that's the problem. It's really you. You're the problem here.
Or there's no problem.
Right. Or there's what problem?
Exactly. So here's an example of defensiveness. Say you're driving and then there's a criticism or even just a well done request about the driving. The defensiveness could look like, do you want to drive? Or I stopped soon enough.
Right.
Or, it's fine.
Right.
I'm driving fine. I'm a good driver.
Yeah. And oftentimes I have to sift, or I have to through a mental filter, if Chris comes off as being critical, I have to kind of remind myself that she's a good-willed woman. She's confronting to connect because something happened and she's wanting to connect with me, but something happened that she needs to talk about. Now, my style will be like, oh, whatever, I'll just let it go. Her style is, no, we need to talk about it in order for us to feel better about it. So, but if I deflect, if I defend my position, she doesn't feel heard or understood. So what I have to do here is really, here's the antidote, take responsibility for anything that she said, or the smallest piece. Sometimes I can disagree with almost all of it, but generally there's a little element of truth in there that I could take responsibility for.
Yeah, I think what we tend to see is the criticizer will share this long list of criticisms, right? And then the defensive person will just go, maybe some of those things were true, but they'll take something that they disagree with and then they'll be like, well, no, I didn't do that. You do this,
right.
Blah, 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 blah. And they kind of just push it all back. But if you could do the opposite of that and go, okay, what's one thing I can take responsibility for that she just said? And that will usually diffuse the situation. So that's the antidote. So here's an example. Sorry, babe, I could have started braking sooner. You're not saying that you're an awful driver or that she has every right to be so freaked out about the way you were driving, or you're just taking responsibility. Yeah, I could have started braking sooner at that red light. Yeah.
That's never happened to us. The next one that we often see would be stonewalling. So generally, let's say that this interaction goes back and forth. There's criticism, and then there's defensiveness, and then let's just keep the genders. So Chris is he's not getting it, so I need to express it more clearly. So she's more critical, and then I'm more defensive, and then it all breaks down to I become flooded, which means that I have an increase in cortisol and I have some adrenaline amping up, and I'm like, I'm done. I'm going to, and in my mind, I'm withdrawing, saying, I'm going to keep the peace. This is a dumb argument. I don't agree with her, so I'm just going to shut up and stop arguing because that will fix everything. And that's called stonewalling, which isn't helpful.
Some guys will actually leave the room in order to stonewall,
Which is a form of control.
Yeah. And then some guys will actually just shut down and stay in the conversation, but be completely disengaged, kind of giving like, yeah. Like they're not even engaged. So that's stonewalling as well. And so what's the antidote for this? So like an example of stonewalling would be saying like, nothing's wrong. I'm fine. Yeah. It's fine.
I'm good.
We're fine. It's all good. But instead of that, you could say, I'm not sure how I feel right now, except that I'm just really overwhelmed. Can we talk about this? Take a breather and talk about it after the kids go to bed. So you are actually pausing the conversation because you're not going to make any progress when you're flooded. You're in fight or flight. By the way, ladies, when your husband is shutting down, it's usually their attempt at keeping things safe. Adam said earlier, keeping the peace, because they're not going to fight you. Most of them, some do, right? That's where domestic violence occurs. But instead of fighting you, they withdraw. So they flee instead. And so they're keeping everything safe.
Which looks like abandonment.
Yes.
To the pursuer.
But instead of just abandoning altogether, you can say, hey, this is important. I know we need to solve this. I don't know how I'm feeling about it right now. I'm flooded. Can we come back to this after we put the kids down and we could have a conversation about it again?
So what she was just doing there was reassuring if she was withdrawing from the conversation, she's reassuring the person like, hey, look, I'm going to be back.
Yeah.
We will figure this out. But right now I'm not in a place that I can settle this with you. And if you do that well enough, a good amount of times, they'll start to trust the fact that you'll do what you say you're going to do.
You have to come back to it.
You always have to come back to it.
The step that gets missed.
And it is. Or the reassurance. They just disappear. The withdrawer disappears, never to come back. And that's scary too for the other person. Like, hey, you keep doing this every time we hit this subject.
Yeah.
We got to figure this out. When are we going to do this? And then it becomes like a all in every single time they hit that conversation. So that's not helpful either. So that's the third, stonewalling. So the last one, the last horseman of the apocalypse, according to Gottman, is contempt.
So contempt is really an escalated form of criticism. It's where like criticism has, been the MO for so long and it's not working. And so that criticizer will just amp up and start using contemptuous language. And really contemptuous language is where you like massacre that person's identity. So it's not really even just like about their character anymore. It's about you are a problem. Who you are is a problem.
Yeah, you are deficient. And really it's still an attempt to prod the person into action in the direction that they want. So, you're beneath me because you're doing this. And really, it's still just, please do this, please change. But ultimately, that's just going to really offend the other person and they're going to keep pulling back.
And ultimately, the studies show it leads to divorce.
Yes.
So Gottman found that for couples who had contempt in the relationship, if it continued, then they were divorced within 5 years, 85% of the time. So that's a pretty high degree of certainty that, if you have contempt in your marriage right now and you don't get it out of your marriage, 85% chance you're going to be divorced in 5 years.
Right. And something that we point out sometimes to clients too is that you could show contempt with body language as well.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be with words. Sometimes you could do that with body language. So we give these to you, and thank you, Gottman, for that research. And it is really helpful for us as married couples to look at the relationship and say, we could probably get better at some of these.
So an example of contempt would be something like, he said body language, like eye rolling. That's a big one. Another one is like comments like, why can't you, it's all inclusive, like superlatives. Why can't you ever put your clothes away? That's using the word ever. You're such a slob. So name calling, right? So it's not just about the character anymore. It's like name calling. Like, you're such a slob. Or maybe they're making food and they don't make any food for you. And you say, oh, you made food and you didn't make any for me. Mm-hmm. You're such a pig.
It's an attempt to make a person feel bad about themselves.
Or like they're nothing. It's superiority.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is something that you want to make sure to get out of your marriage. So the antidote for this is express your feeling and then express a request or even a longing. This is a little bit deeper than what would be like the request in the criticism antidote. This is like a longing, and then an invitation to work on it. So you could say something like, I'm really getting more and more upset about the clothes on the floor instead of in the laundry hamper. I know you're not trying to upset me on purpose. I wish we could find a solution for this and I'd feel so much more at peace. Yeah. That's a longing. Can you please tell me how you're working on this? That's the invitation.
Yeah. If you have some of these in your marriage, don't wait. I would highly recommend that you reach out to a mentor, that you would find a counselor, somebody to help walk you guys through this, because, actually studies show that people reach out if there is chest pain within 4 hours. But the average time to reach out for help for marital problems, the first sign of pain, emotional pain, is 7 years. Oftentimes, couples wait way too long to reach out for counseling because they tell themselves like, I'm less than if we need counseling or whatever. But seriously, every single great athlete or, people doing big things in the world have coaches. Mm-hmm. So get someone on your side to help you guys work through this so that you can enjoy the rest of your 7 years.
Yeah, the rest of your entire marriage. So we're here for you. If you want to reach out, we'll put our information in the show notes, and we'd love to walk alongside you in this. But even if it's not with us, we totally recommend get some help, get someone to walk alongside you if you're finding this really difficult to pull out of. So we're here for you guys. We love you.
And if you found this video helpful, please like and subscribe and even comment down in the show notes if any of this has been helpful or you have some ideas of your own on this topic. So thank you for watching.